The Hilltop Glove Podcast is sponsored by Mid-Carolina Service Company.
Mid-Carolina Service Company is the first name to search for your residential or commercial HVAC needs in Lexington and surrounding areas.
Just go holler at Jason and Clint. They'll hook you up on the air conditioners, on the restaurant equipment, refrigerators, refrigeration, ice machine repair. They've been doing this for years. I know them cats forever.
Family owned and operated since 2006, they pride themselves in their quality work and customer relationships. Call 803-356-4153 or visit midcarolinaserviceco.com for a no obligation quote for service today.
The Hilltop Glove Podcast is sponsored by True Brilliance Entertainment.
True Brilliance is a production, promotions, and management company dedicated to connecting artists and producers across the Carolinas to music industry professionals.
Several of their clients have placements both domestic and internationally as a result of their services.
Are you an artist or producer looking to build meaningful relationships within the music industry? Then True Brilliance is for you. Check them out at paramilitary.com. That's spelled P-A-I-R-A military.com.
This episode of the Hilltop Glove Podcast is sponsored by Bob's. Bob's is a Columbia-based retailer of over 100 Black-owned products from 20 Black-owned businesses. Bob's offers a wide range of items from household cleaning, cosmetics, and everything in between. With every visit to Bob's, you support Black-owned businesses, giving them the opportunity to grow and establish connections with our community. Bob's is located inside the Noma warehouse at 2222 Sumter Street in Columbia, South Carolina. Visit their website, weshopbobs.com, for in-store pickup or to find out more. Bob's can also be found via social media on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at weshopbobs. When you stop by, tell them the Hilltop Glove sent you. Bob's brings quality Black brands to the Columbia community. The Hilltop Glove Podcast is sponsored by Red Rooster Sports Bar and Grill. Red Rooster is your neighborhood bar and grill serving the best wings, burgers, and baskets in the Met.
Like the amazing food, the bar is always on tap, and there's plenty of screens to watch the big game. Red Rooster is the Midland's premier meetup spot for local car and bike clubs, fraternities, and sororities.
Staff is dedicated to accommodating all kinds of parties and events. If you're looking to catch a game, have a bite, and a drink, look no further than the Red Rooster.
Red Rooster is located at 7500 Wilson Boulevard, Columbia, South Carolina. For more information, visit redroostersportsbar.com or visit them on Facebook, Instagram at Red Rooster Sports Bar. Go where the winners go.
Welcome to the Hilltop Glove Podcast.
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 Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Hilltop Glove Podcast. I'm your host Tamaya, as well as my friends Skip, Mike, and DJ N. What? Today's guests, we have Casey Handy Smith, and she is from Houston, Texas, based attorney specializing in business, entertainment, and digital media law. Her law firm, C. Handy Law, is focused on protecting the rights of exploited minority talent and influencers by means of providing contractual and legal advice. She has her own podcast called Unspoken Terms, where she talks about leading influencers, thought leaders, and content creators about the importance of protecting your work and your creative branding. Welcome, Ms. Casey Handy Smith. I love saying your name. It's like it's professional. Like last night, I was just like, "Oh, Casey Handy Smith." Casey Handy Smith.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, I'm doing well. So glad to be here. It's funny because every once in a while I'll be like so over my hyphenated name, especially when I'm filling out paperwork and like doing stuff at the bank or whatever. But yeah, glad to be here. So happy to be here.
Thank you for joining us. We appreciate you for waking up this morning.
Yes, ma'am.
Listen, I have a 2-month-old, so I've been up for hours anyway.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So yeah, it is no problem at all.
Whoa, motherhood. How is it?
Oh, it's going. It's an adjustment. This is our first one. So definitely an adjustment. Thank you. Thank you very much. But it's been great so far. I've been enjoying it. Just recently started back working. So yeah, it's been interesting, balancing work and now motherhood and being a wife and all those good things. But it's been good. It's been good. I have a lot of help and support. So I'm grateful for that.
And it takes a village. So I'm glad that you do have that.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I don't take it for granted.
So Casey, tell the people a little bit about yourself. What do you do and how do you do it? And especially, how do you do it? Being a mother and an attorney, that seems like a lot of work. But yeah, just give us a rundown of, your business, your law firm, and everything about that.
Yeah, sure. So, you really sum things up with the bio, but like you said, I'm an attorney. I'm a contract lawyer. So my firm, we specialize in contract negotiations, drafting custom contracts. And we also provide contract templates for creatives because we like to have kind of those avenues for folks who are entrepreneurs and creatives who are just starting out and may not be at a point yet where they can afford to actually hire our firm to handle contracts for them and draft for them. So we provide contract templates at an affordable rate, for entrepreneurs and newer creatives. And yeah, so we specialize in contracts. That's what we do. We primarily work with social media influencers, recording artists. That's really the
about visual artists. Visual artists, do you guys work with them also?
A little bit. We don't do a whole lot with visual artists. We work a lot with online businesses because I got into that space several years ago. But yeah, so we work with a lot of like bloggers, online businesses, social media influencers, and like I said, recording artists, mainly because of my background.
Oh, music background. Okay, cool. Okay, that makes so much more sense now.
Yeah.
So, as you know, in the United States, the term lawyer and attorney are used often interchangeably, although both terms refer to someone educated in the law. Can you please break down the difference between a lawyer and an attorney? Because I was like, I looked up the definition, but I'm like, some people might not understand that still. So
yeah, so there's it can be a little dicey because I feel like there's like different definitions that kind of go around, but typically how I think of it and how most legal professionals think of it is a lawyer is someone who went to law school, graduated law school, but doesn't necessarily have a law license. So they may not have like yet passed the bar exam. Or maybe they're not planning to even take the bar exam. So they're not planning to practice, like in court. Whereas an attorney, is licensed, at a state bar and can practice in court. So that's typically the distinction that I roll with.
That's a big distinction.
Yeah. I was like, I passed the bar exam, and I'm like, okay, so what does that make you? Can you practice or not? Should I call you or not?
Yeah. No, it is a distinction because when you're an attorney and you like pass the bar exam and you're licensed with a state bar, there's much higher standards that you're held to when it comes to practicing law, since you actually, can practice. So yeah, there's definitely a distinction there. Like lawyer, like, if you haven't, taken the bar, passed the bar yet, you definitely have a lot of the same knowledge, that an attorney has. It's just, you don't have that licensing.
Okay.
That an attorney has. Yeah.
Cool. So at what age did you actually decide to practice law?
That's a good question. So the moment that I mainly think about was, I think I was a junior in high school, or maybe I was either a junior or a senior in high school. I was at home one day with my dad. He was like newly retired at the time from the federal government. And so I had always heard about and known about some sort of legal stuff because of the work that he did. So it always kind of interested me just from his work. But I remember being home with him one day and we were watching the news because my dad is like, that generation of like, all they do for real is watch the news, right? Like,
sit down and watch it,
yeah, like all day, every day. So we're watching, so CNN is just like all in the background. And what it ends up coming on was like, Congress was like voting to like renew like the Voting Rights Act. And I was like, as a teenager, I'm like, what do you mean they have to like renew it? Like, what are you talking about? Like, Black people have the right to vote. Like, what's the problem? And so I was not familiar with that. I didn't realize that was something that that even in, what year is that, 2006, 2007, that as a Black person in this country, like my right to vote could be taken away if Congress decides that this year they don't want to, renew this particular law. And so, and don't quote me on the particulars of this. I'm not a civil rights attorney, and at that time I had really done a lot of research and dove into it because I was just like super disbelief. But just kind of thinking back on it, like, I know, like, that was a moment where I was like, wait, like, what do you mean? Like, so I really felt a way about that. And so I talked to my dad and, we talked about it for a little while. And he was like, well, I know some different attorneys, through my line of work. And so he ended up helping me get into a program called Swell, which is a program for Black students in Cincinnati area. So I grew up in Cincinnati, so I'm not from Houston. Okay. I've been in Houston. Gotcha. I've lived in Houston for the last, I've been here for like 10, 11 years at this point. But I actually grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio. And so Cincinnati's Black Bar Association, they formed this program or organization for students, Black students who are interested in going into law. So every single summer of college, cool. Yeah, it was a really cool program. So every single summer I was partnered at different legal experiences just to kind of learn about the law. So it was really cool because, I got to work like in-house at General Electric one summer. I worked at a big law firm one summer. I worked for a federal judge another summer. So it was just so it was an awesome experience to be able to really dive in and kind of get a better understanding of what practicing law, being an attorney is, and what kind of stuff I really did like and what I didn't like too. So I definitely learned quickly what stuff I was not too interested in.
So what areas of the law were you not interested in?
Yeah.
So criminal for me. Like when working for that federal judge, like it's an interesting feeling to be in a courtroom and see that the only other people that look like you are in chains. And so for me, it was just like, I can definitely understand why, a lot of Black attorneys would flock to that in terms of being able to help the Black community. But for me, I was just like, this is heavy. This is hella heavy. Like, I can't do this every day. I wouldn't be able to do this like every day. So yeah. So for me, criminal was like, it was that
definitely would be hard too, and you have to keep like a level ground. Like you can't be biased on one side. Like that's really hard.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you carry that case with you too every day as you're working it. Like I couldn't do that either. I had an inkling to want to go into the law profession as well, but it was going to be strictly for intellectual property because I didn't want to have to deal with criminal issues or anything like that. That's just too much for me. But I guess shifting gears, of course, we do research on all of our guests. We try to figure out who you are, where you're coming from, and et cetera. And of course, we found out that you come from a family of musically inclined people. And that really piques our interest because we love our music, especially here on the Hilltop Glove podcast. And I just had to ask, what was the experience like in shaping your career growing up in that type of family?
Yeah. So growing up, I was really heavy into music. Like for a long time, I really thought that I was going to do something professionally in music. So I was really so I grew up playing classical piano. So I was trained as a classical pianist. Yeah. I used to do regional competitions, all that kind of stuff. And so I was really big into music theory, and I took music theory courses and stuff in high school, and I loved scoring. And so for a long time, I thought I wanted to get into music scoring for movies and things like that. And so, so of course, having a family that was into music, everyone, plays some sort of instrument, of course, just growing up around those influences where, pretty much go to school, come home, you practice, and, that's life, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It was,
training.
Yeah. And so it was very, so obviously it was a supportive, I guess, space in terms of if you want to do something in music, that makes sense. But once I got to college, and well, even before college. So of course in high school, I had that experience where I was like, you know what, I think, I might want to do law. once I got into college and I learned that our university had a music business program, it was like, to me, it was like the perfect marriage, the perfect merge of like, because as much as I love music and like performing and playing music, I always had this inkling towards like business and having a business mind. And so for me, it was like, okay, I think this would be the perfect space for me to be able to still be around creatives, still, have a bit of that, in my day-to-day life, but also be able to like really work on the business side, because I always had that ability to kind of understand business type concepts, I guess, that a lot of creatives don't necessarily, I don't say don't understand, but they don't necessarily care about,
Exactly. Yeah, there's no passion. There's no passion there.
Exactly.
Finding cracks in the holes and like, don't forget about this part. And what about if this happens? You got to do this. Okay. That's cool.
That is extra dope, man. Like, all right, what was one of your fondest memories of growing up in that household?
One of my fondest memories would probably be Thanksgiving. So Thanksgiving is a big holiday in our family because it's linked to our college homecoming. So I went to Alabama State University, which is a HBCU in Montgomery. Yeah. And most of my family went to ASU. So all of my family is actually from Alabama. Yes. So most of my family is actually from Alabama. We just moved around a lot because of my dad's job. Like I said, he was federal government. So Cincinnati, we had like one cousin up there, but like all of my roots are in Alabama. And so when we travel home for different holidays, we go to Alabama, and Thanksgiving was always a big one for us because for years they had the Turkey Day Classic, which was Alabama State versus Tuskegee. And so with my family,
this comes on TV. Come on,
yeah. And I don't know, y'all being in the Carolinas, might be more familiar than some people. But yeah, so a lot of my family, going to Alabama State. My mom went to Tuskegee. We have a lot of Tuskegee people, so it was like this big rivalry. So like every year, we go home for Thanksgiving. It's homecoming, it's parades, the football games. But then after all that stuff during the day, we would go back to my grandparents' house. Have turkey, cakes, all the good Thanksgiving food. And then everybody would get around the piano. And because everyone plays, it would be like almost like a recital, right? It would be like, okay, what have you been working on since the last time we saw you? So everybody would sit down, play a piece, whatever. And then, as the night goes on, pretty much it's turned to a jam session. Just, us playing and singing, different stuff. Sometimes my granddaddy might take his sax out, just, all kinds of stuff. So that's probably,
she said axe. Right. She said axe.
Sax. No, saxophone.
Sax. Okay, my fault. I thought you meant like the guitar. Okay, saxophone.
No, saxophone,
wait. So. Did anybody ever record this?
That's a great question. Yeah. There may be some footage on like somebody's old flip phone, but like, I don't know, but yeah, that's probably like my fondest memory is just like coming together as a family, like after all the homecoming stuff for Thanksgiving and like just, enjoying music.
Man, all right. I like that. That's so cool, man. Because we're extreme music lovers and we love hearing stories like that, especially like with creatives, being able to be around your family and get that vibe going so you can like exchange good energy. I know that's super dope. Super dope.
They accept you and you guys can have a good time together. It's just
that's wild, man. That's a lot of talent.
Families, they argue.
No, but tis true. But moving on, I know we were talking about being creatives, and that's a big part of all of our backgrounds here on this show. But creative entrepreneurs, man, sometimes they think that just being talented is good enough to help them out in the world of business. And we know that's naivety and that's not how it really works. And it's very important for us to understand that legal protection is vital. And could you explain that to our audience a little bit, the importance of that? Because I know a lot of our audience, a lot of them are going to be, I know they are creatives. They work in various different mediums, but, they really want to, there is a need for them to protect their intellectual property in order for them to even be successful. Could you explain a little bit of that to our audience, why that's so important?
Yeah. So it's one of those things where if you're not protecting the things that you create, you really can't ever leverage it to make money off of it the way that you want to. And I think a lot of people don't fully realize that, because when you don't protect yourself, you leave yourself open to, you know, other people potentially staking claim in the stuff that you've created, or just not having the things set up properly on the back end for you. Again, you just can't, you can't capitalize off of it. So it's a mixture of like understanding how to protect your intellectual property and how to protect your creative stuff, and understanding that you need to put those pieces together from the very beginning. So of course, as an attorney, you know, I always talk about, you know, making sure you're copywriting stuff, you're trademarking stuff, making sure you have good contracts in place that clearly outline different various ownership rights. Because I think that's a huge thing with creatives, right? Like we get into, like you said, these vibes and these creative spaces, and we're all doing these things together, and, you know, it's dope and all these things. But then when, you know, it's all said and done, no one took the time to sit down and do, say, a songwriter split sheet to say, okay, this person owns this percentage and that percentage.
Yep.
And so now the song, you know, say it gets out there and it gets popular, and everybody's like, well, where's the money, right? Like, how does this work? And so you want to make sure that you're clearly outlining those things from the beginning, and then also just like logistically setting stuff up so that you can get paid. Because with the way that, you know, intellectual property and the internet now just makes it so much easier to get stuff out there. But in a sense, it can make things a little bit harder or more confusing in terms of how you get paid as well. So you want to make sure that you are clear on the different avenues for how you get paid as a creative, so that you're registering with the proper entities and all of that stuff, so that, you know, your things can be tracked and you actually can make money off of it. So I'm kind of, it's like, as I'm talking, I kind of forgot your original question, but hopefully that answered.
No, you were right on line. You were right on line. You're explaining why, because we want to know, because, all right, getting even into, I like the last point you were just on. How do you track your property? Like, can you explain like what kind of legal tools exist that help you to track your property so that you can receive payment or receive some kind of income from them?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's going to, of course, depend upon the type of creative you are. So there's different resources and tools for various industries. I'll speak to music because that's what I'm most familiar with and where, you know, I practice. But so for musicians or songwriters, so we'll just use, for example purposes, we'll say songwriters. So say you're a songwriter, you want to make sure that you're registered with a PRO, which is a performing rights organization. You know, it's BMI, CSEC, ASCAP are the main ones. And so you want to make sure that you're registered with one of them so that you can get your performance royalties, and so that they can be tracking those things for you. You want to make sure that you're also registered at places like Sound Exchange. So there's a variety. So those are just kind of a couple of examples of places that you need to be registered at if you're in the music space, to make sure that your royalties are actually being tracked, which is again why it's so, and Sound Exchange is a big one because they track like digital performance royalties. And so if you're working again with other songwriters or other performers, other artists, so, you know, especially like in the hip hop space, so I work with, you know, primarily like hip hop artists. And of course, in rap and hip hop, like collaborations are huge, right? Yeah. And so, yeah, you're working with multiple producers, multiple artists, like everybody wants to get a verse or whatever, which is cool. But you want to make sure that, again, that stuff is clearly outlined in terms of who owns what, and making sure that that stuff is properly registered with places like Sound Exchange, so that, again, once a song starts getting distributed, you know, in any form or fashion, like it doesn't even have to be that you're with some major label or something like that. But if it's just being distributed, you know, on the internet, whatever, like you want to make sure
even
those
independent,
royalties,
right?
Exactly. Yep. You want to make sure that those things are being tracked again, so you can get paid. So, yeah.
At the end of the day, it's about the business.
Answer the next question. You really did. Like we were going to jump into the exploitation of Black creators, particularly in music and art industry, about them not owning the rights of their work and dying without their right. So yeah, you answered that right on the T. But what do you can learn from the past about that? You know, as far as going forward, what do you think we should know that every artist should know, not just songwriters?
Yeah, I mean, I think every artist should know how valuable the things they create are. Mm-hmm. And because those things are valuable, you have to go into it from the beginning like it's really worth something.
Right.
I think a lot of creatives, because I say this all the time, because Black people are so talented, right? Because as a whole, we're just a lit group of people, right? Mm-hmm. And so because
our trash is treasure.
It's basically like facts, right? And so because we are like so talented, I think a lot of times we can take for granted like how valuable the things that come very natural for us really are. And so I think generally understanding that, okay, the things that you do, the things that you create are unique to you and they are valuable. And there are people out here who are more than happy to capitalize off of it if you are not going to do so. And so you want to make sure you understand that, and then also take some responsibility too. So I think one of the biggest problems you see a lot of creatives, especially those who get linked up with like these bigger companies, or again, speaking from the music side, get picked up by a big label, they tend to, it's kind of like a feeling of like relief almost. They're like, okay, now I have this big company who's going to handle the business stuff for me. So I don't have to worry about it. I can just, make music and not worry about this stuff. But you got to take responsibility of your stuff yourself to at least have a working understanding of how everything works.
And you can't just be ignorant.
Yeah, you can't just be ignorant, and making sure that you're listening to the people around you who are trying to help you. Because Lord, like not put anybody on blast, but I can't tell you how big it is. Listen, I can't tell you like how many times like I'll be working on stuff for clients, and I'm trying to explain to them like what the various deals are, and they're like, okay, bet, like they don't care at all. Just like, where do I sign? Like no interest whatsoever. So you have to, like, I literally had clients say to me, like, Casey, I don't care about what to say. Just where do I need to sign this? Like,
Oh, good God.
How does that you feel, knowing that they need to be concerned about this, but they're not?
I mean, well, I would say for me personally, I know they don't, I will say I don't feel like they have to be concerned about it, because I know the type of person I am outside of being a lawyer. You know what I mean? Like, I know that I do extreme due diligence, plus I have integrity. So like, I'm not going to be out here just doing, exactly. I'm not going to be putting my clients in crazy situations, period. And so, but everybody's not like that. And so you have to, as a creative, you have to take it upon yourself to make sure, again, that you have a working understanding, and that, you do have people in your corner who care about you to some extent, to make sure that you're going to be good. So.
Very true. Very true.
Well, as you know, a lot of creatives desire legal protection when establishing their business, but due to the factors such as limited resources or access to legal expertise, fail. So what advice would you give to anyone with limited resources about protecting their intellectual property?
The internet. Because really and truly, like, nowadays you really don't have an excuse to like have no idea what's going on.
Tell it. No excuse.
Really, because there are a lot of really good resources out there. Now, I will say, you want to make sure that you're going to the right resources, because of course there's all kind of information out there. But so say for intellectual property in particular, copyright.gov. Right, where you go to register copyrights. They have tons of information, tons of resources to help you in understanding things and help you in registering your copyrights too. So, if you do your due diligence, you can learn quite a bit and take matters into your own hands if you're at a point where you can't, afford legal. Same with trademarks. If you're wanting to protect, your business name or logo or, something tied to your branding, the trademark office, uspto.gov, is where you go for trademarks, and they have a ton of resources. They have videos, they have all kinds of stuff to help you understand the trademark process and, register things yourself if that's the route you have to go. So there's a lot of resources out there. Of course, like I said, making sure you're going to trusted resources, but for IP, those are the two that are the legit spots for like copyrights and intellectual property. And trademarks.
I'm over here taking notes. I'm not even an artist.
Keep taking notes. That's all. Keep taking shoot. No, but that's the type of stuff that our audience needs to hear, because I know Kevin and I, we have these conversations all the time where we're like, man, they can do it. Like, there are ways for them to do it. We just need, like, people need to know what it is and how to get to it. And just hearing the information put together in front of them in a simple way,
Right.
I think that will help make a conducive path for that to happen. That's why we like these conversations, because it's not for, like I always like to tease, it's not just for us, it's for everybody. We're trying to make sure we spread the knowledge so we can make better moves out here. And at the same time, make gains, but protect yourself while you're doing so. And I know we all need a little help in doing that.
Yes, cause people really be out here. Because people really be out here making money, like making significant coins, and like the back end is a hot mess. And so you gotta
explain that front end, that back end situation real quick.
I mean, so like front end, like sales, marketing, positioning, like that's one thing. Like there are people who are out here who know how to make money, period. Yep. Like they know how to, hustlers, they know how to connect, network, like they know how to make money, but they don't know or understand the back end in terms of like what things should have been in place before they necessarily get into certain relationships.
Yeah.
And so
I'm not even gonna lie. That's me. Guilty. Like me. That's me. Yeah, that is me. I'm a true creative, and that's it. Just create. But I business savvy. No.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, I think a lot of times we say creatives and we think of people like kind of in traditional, like creative industries, but like that goes across, like entrepreneurs are creatives, right? So I work with a lot of entrepreneurs who aren't in quote unquote traditional, creative spaces, but they're the same way, where it's like they create, they're making all this money in their business, but it's like, okay, wait, we gotta go back to some foundational things, because now that you are making significant money, now you're not able to take advantage of certain tax benefits and things like that, because you don't have certain contracts and agreements and things like that in place. So now I got to get with your accountant. Now we got to backtrack some things, right, to make sure that you're good and that you're in a space where like now you can really and truly generate that wealth.
I.e. proper business standing.
Yes.
Proper.
Yes, absolutely.
This is something, I don't know if you know who Claude Anderson is, but I love Claude Anderson. And one of his biggest things right now is Black businesses need to get their stuff in order so that we can go out here, do what we need to do, and at the same time have a foundation to create a proper economic system for our community. And one way you have to do that is through contracts, and especially with our intellectual property, just making sure that we have proper foundation. And that leads into this question here that was written by our good brother Mike. And everything is starting to change, per se, our money systems, our art systems. I don't know which is weird, even how the way that money is produced. And that's just getting into NFTs and blockchains and et cetera. Where do you see the future of intellectual property heading with this newfound world of digital media and art selling for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, to be held forever? Like, where do you think it's going?
I mean, I think it's really an exciting time that we live in. If you are a creative person, if you're an entrepreneur, creative entrepreneurs, it's like that's the heart of creative entrepreneurship, right? Is that you have intellectual property and you capitalize that off of that intellectual property. Like you understand the value of that and you've learned how to make a business around the things that out of the ideas in your head. Right. And so I think and so I think that we're in a really exciting time in that it's really easier than ever now to make money, off of your intellectual property. But like you said, you have to go into it making sure you're safeguarding yourself from the beginning and that you're really setting things up as a legitimate business as much as you possibly can. Even if, again, you don't have the resources to hire an attorney or an accountant, fresh out but that you are, going to these various websites that I mentioned and other places to make sure that you are setting things up legitimately. Because I think another problem that a lot of people don't even kind of realize, because, they are in hustle mode and, they're just getting to the money, whatever, is that when you don't have certain things set up, it actually, it halts you from being able to get to a certain level. And then it halts you from even being able to utilize various resources. So something that I saw a lot last year when COVID initially hit was that a lot of folks, they were having, business was slow, different things were shifting because of course the world was like shutting down, except for my folks who have always been online businesses. They were like getting to it in 2020. Exactly. Like they had amazing years, revenue years last year, 2020. But for folks who were not, completely online, it had been difficult. And so, but there were a lot of resources out there for small businesses. But again, because they didn't have certain things set up in their businesses when it came to the paperwork and their financial numbers and things, they weren't eligible to even be able to receive those funds. Gosh. So you have to, so it's kind of like, I feel like with lawyers, like legal, like, accountants and stuff like that, it's kind of like people don't realize how important they are until it's almost too late.
Try to get them in there to finish up, to save like a disaster when they could have been there from the beginning, keeping it out of.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Or even if it's not like complete disaster mode yet, it's just like, okay, well now I want to take advantage of something and I can't take advantage of it because I've been operating for years as a hustler, as opposed to a legitimate business owner. So, and there's a difference.
Okay. The most common area that people fail to, check off their list when they're starting a business? Like, what is the most common problem that you see or mistake that people just overlook that you have to remind them when they come to you?
Most common mistake? That's a good question.
That just came off top of my head.
That's a great question.
Yeah, that was a great question. I'm trying to think the most common mistake. I would say probably collaborating with other creatives, entrepreneurs, like getting into all these various different ventures without getting the paperwork set up for it initially. Because a lot of creatives, it'll be like, oh, this is a great idea. Like, let's work together on X, Y, and Z thing. But then it's like, no one talks about, okay, how is this thing gonna actually function? Like, we need to actually have a contract for this. Right. Even if it's something where you're not looking to necessarily make money off of it initially, you still need to have a contract in place, because with intellectual property, that there's so many, like, you need to be clear on like who owns what.
Yes, that part. And,
go ahead.
Oh, I was about to say that's one of the things. And I guess this is part of like digging into where things are going now, because that's why you have NFTs, because that way you could actually purchase something, have it or put it in a contract, have it out there in a blockchain and have it locked down, i.e. you don't have to worry about getting into an issue of whether or not something is legal and the ramifications where monies and stuff should go from it. It's already set. And I know this is something we were talking about this week. It was weird because just because of the intellectual property right thing, even though it's related to monetary systems and et cetera, they're tying the money to the intellectual property, like one-to-one digitally. And I think that is interesting as a son of a gun. And do you think that will change the way you write contracts?
You mean in terms of how, ask that question again?
All right. So do you think the way that they're tying intellectual property to actual currency, do you think that's going to change the way in which you write contracts?
Oh, yeah. Oh, 100%. So, okay. Yeah, I mean, it changes it every day. So that's a thing too. So that's another common mistake, I would say. So common mistake, number one, we just talked about not getting paperwork in place, because a lot of people think that if there's not money immediately tied to it, or if it's not a big amount of money, then I don't need to worry about it. That's not the case, because especially dealing with intellectual property, you got to get those ownership rights. But then also another mistake I would say is working with professionals who are not in the spaces that you operate in. So I can't tell you how many times I've gotten contracts from folks who are like, oh yeah, my brother-in-law is a family law attorney and he drafted this for me. And I'm like, honey, listen, like, no shade to your brother-in-law, but like, this is not, because things are constantly changing and evolving in these various spaces where, and if you're not in the weeds of it and constantly working through it, like, there's no way that you're going to know the intricate details. So yeah, to answer your question, yes, it already has changed the way that I draft contracts. Like, literally every scenario that I'm presented with through clients is like, and that's the thing I think people don't realize too. Like, they feel like, oh, you're a contract lawyer, you probably got all these templates and you just kind of like copy paste, switch some stuff out and like whatever. Not the case at all. Like every contract, I kind of equate it to like music theory sometimes, right? Because it's like you're almost creating like the perfect song when you're writing a contract because there's so many, like, truly, there's so many like moving pieces with it. There's so many things you have to consider in order to get it to merge into the final, piece that it needs to be to ultimately really protect the client. And again, it's changing every single day because of the internet and the way in which people are making money through their intellectual property. So yeah, for sure. It's fast moving and it is definitely always changing.
What's the longest contract you ever put out?
Good
The longest I've ever drafted, read, or both?
Oh, wow. Read? Oh, Lord. I don't want to know that one.
The longest contract I ever read, had to red line and negotiate, all that stuff, I think was like 65 pages.
Ooh.
Yeah. In terms of ones that I've drafted, I try to keep the stuff as plain English as possible when I'm drafting contracts. So maybe the longest one I've personally done is maybe like 15, 20 pages.
Ooh,
and that's
good
like,
Lord.
Yeah. And that was like some, a very interesting, unique situation sort of scenario. But like the average, contract that I draft doesn't have to be that long. So, yeah.
It sounds like an amazing thing. Like, wow.
Yeah, so it's a lot of work.
your life as a mother, attorney, and spouse, like, how do you balance everything? And do you have any tips for anyone?
How do I balance everything? Well, I'm still learning how to balance being a mom because, like I said, I have a 2-month-old. Yeah. So that is still very new for me. And I just started back in the last couple of weeks. Started back working again. So it's been interesting to kind of balance that. And so thankfully, we were able to find someone who comes to our house because I am home based. So my firm has actually been virtual since 2018. We work with clients all over. Yeah, we work with clients all over. I used to have a physical office here in Houston, but honestly, it just didn't make sense because a lot of my clients aren't even in Houston. So yeah, and the ones who are from Houston they're hardly here anyway because they're always traveling and doing different stuff for their businesses. So yes, I've been home based since 2018. And so, like I said, we were fortunate to find someone who comes to our house to watch the baby for, a set amount of hours every day during the week so that I can get some work done. So that's been nice and helpful because, babies, they do sleep a lot, but they are super unpredictable. So yeah, I'm not trying to be on Zoom calls with my son, but so that's been cool. And in terms of like, being a wife, all that, I mean, me and my husband have been married, it'll be 6 years this year. So I think I got some.
Congratulations.
Thanks. I think I got some good practice in terms of like balancing that stuff for a while before we, had our son. So that was nice. So, I mean, and I will say definitely working from home makes it easier for me to balance because even though I do have, days can be long and depending upon what is on my with various deals and things like that, some weeks are more taxing than others, but it's nice to be home because at least I can still kind of, do stuff around the house. And
I think that's amazing that you're virtual. I'm like, what?
No, since 2018.
Right. So I'm like, what?
Ahead of the game.
That's true encouragement right there. Like you're encouraging people to like,
you can do that.
Possible.
You can do it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, it really, because with a lot of these deals, I mean, it's your email. It's email, phone calls, you're electronically signing contracts. Like nobody's meeting in person in these big conference rooms to like negotiate deals.
Do you think
that doesn't happen?
The world is so weird. Like it's evolving right before us.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, it's 100% possible, you know, so.
Now, do you have people under you, working under you also?
I do. And everyone's virtual. So
okay.
Wow. I utilize a lot of different apps. And so I think that's, you know, when I speak about things that entrepreneurs need to do and all that stuff, it's like, you know, I'm speaking to them from like, okay, I'm an attorney, so I see the legal stuff, but it's like, I'm also an entrepreneur, right? Mm-hmm. Who's also like doing stuff in the online space, has intellectual property. Because like I mentioned, you know, I have the contract templates that we sell. So that's like, you know, really, that's actually technically a whole separate business. And
right.
I saw that. I saw the legal attachments in there to explain that it is a separate LLC.
Absolutely.
Ain't playing no games with it.
Listen, not at all. And I don't know when y'all will release this episode, but we're actually in the process of separating out the branding. So we have a lot of exciting things getting ready to happen with the digital product store. So I'm really excited about that. But yeah, so my team, everyone is virtual. Let's see, we're a small team. My business manager is in Atlanta, my legal associates in LA, and then I have some other creative copywriters in Detroit. And yeah, that's my core folks.
Wow. Hey, that's amazing. Like, I wish we had like a drum roll, round of applause.
Yeah, we could get our little drops. Okay.
Not drop. Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, it's totally doable. It's been great for me. Like a big part of, I always knew I wanted to work for myself. So even in law school, like I was intentionally connecting with other attorneys who had their own practices and just other entrepreneurs. And so, you know, for me, building a business around my lifestyle has always been my primary focus. Yeah. So it makes it easier to balance, you know, being a mom, being a wife, because those things for me are the priority, and my business has to work around those things, not the other way around.
That's strong.
What's your zodiac sign? You seem very organized.
I am very organized. I'm a Cancer.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't get too deep into zodiac signs, but I'm a Cancer. I don't know if that's like organized or what.
I just like asking people. Like, what's your zodiac sign?
Yeah, she got to ask. I was about that. I was waiting for that. Because we had to figure out, because like you're on top of your stuff. Like, first of all, you're ahead of the game on what it is that you do and how you do it. Mm-hmm. You have your birds in the order, man. I mean, the ducks all lined up all pretty. So we always like to ask that. And we always want our audience to hear that people like this do exist and that this is real and it's not some fictional stuff. So yeah, that's cool.
So how can people find you and contact you if they have any questions or just want to get involved?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm on social media at Contract Casey everywhere on social. So Instagram is where I'm most active. So you can definitely connect with me over on Instagram. If you have questions, you can send us an email, hello@chandylaw.com. That email is also on Instagram. So literally, if you find me on Instagram, like you'll be able to get to everything else. Yeah. So, but you can always, you know, slide in my DMs and stuff too. But yeah, email, you know, if you want quick response, you probably want to send the email.
So you check email.
Like, being honest.
Like, you check your email like every hour on the hour.
Well, no. So my assistant manages the inbox. So that's what I mean in terms of like, if you want a quicker response, make sure you sit, because like, you know, because I get a lot of messages and stuff, you know, DMs and whatnot, and I get to them when I can, but like, you know, that's her job. So if you send an email, you'll get a much quicker response.
Oh, definitely. Also tell us about your podcast, because I was listening to a couple episodes.
Yes.
So about my podcast, so we're on a bit of a hiatus at the moment, and actually in the process of kind of revamping that as well. So in line with the things that we're going to be doing with the digital product store. So definitely stay tuned for all of those things. But yeah, so the podcast, Unspoken Terms, we talk with influencers, entrepreneurs about their journeys in business, and we like to highlight some of the experiences they've had that haven't been the best experience as it comes to some of the legal things in their business. So primarily contracts, of course, and some things that they didn't realize, you know, they need to have in their contracts or not having contracts in place at all, and how that impacted them in business. And so it's really a resource for other entrepreneurs to listen to, you know, these folks who are doing really well and just learning from their mistakes. So yeah, so that's the premise of the podcast. But stay tuned for, like I said, we're in a bit of a transition space right now with those things. But yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I enjoyed this episode.
Me too, man. It was excellent. Because we don't usually get to speak to, I guess you get like entertainment lawyers or contractual lawyers. People don't walk around every day and say, hey, let me spark up a conversation with this contractual lawyer over here. It's something, especially in the space we deal in, that we need to have these conversations. And so,
yeah, and that's what I like, is having a conversation. And I like that you're a female entrepreneur.
Yes.
doing it well.
Thank you. Well, thank you guys so much for having me. And I will say, you know, like any entrepreneur, nothing is perfect, right? In every stage of business, there's always going to be things that come up that you got to tweak, that you got to work through, but you just got to keep going, you know, keep your eye on the prize, you know, whatever your reason was for starting your business, just keep that at the forefront and just keep pushing, working through and connecting with other folks, because that makes a huge difference in how you succeed for sure in business.
Most definitely. Well, with that being said, we want to, give a big ups, big thanks to our guest today, our esteemed guest, Ms. Casey Handy Smith, Esquire. We're going to throw the Esquire on the end, make sure they get that in there. Because, you know, you took that test for a reason. We want to thank her for coming on today, explaining some of these, I guess, some of the intricate details dealing with contract law, with creatives, influencers, thought leaders, etc. Also intellectual property. We want everybody to make sure they go through and check out her Instagram page. We will also post this stuff up on the episode information when we do put the episode out. And I mean, other than that, all I can say is everybody have a great Saturday. Enjoy yourself out there. Be safe. And until next time, take it easy. Peace.
That's it for today's episode of the Hilltop Glove Podcast. Make sure to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and other platforms. Also follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Hilltop Glove.